Hello, so this video is all about how to switch off and be in the moment. It's one of those things that my clients and I often talk about, and I want to share a little bit of a story. First of all, those of you who know me on Facebook, you'll know that this weekend we did the Cherry Blossom Trail, so I'll tell you a little bit of a story about that. I also want to talk to you about why it's in, what does switching off, what is it and what isn't it? Why it's important not to compare yourself with other people, and how your own listening skills can help you to develop those resources within yourself. If you want to be able to manage yourself better, you want to be able to switch yourself off. And lastly, I want to talk about, those of you that are hardwired to be in different time frames to being in the moment, not to lose sight of the fact that that's your strength. So when to use it and when to switch it off and when to maximise this moment right now. So going back to that then, how to switch off and be in the moment. One of the things that I arranged this weekend was the Cherry Blossom Trail here in Bridgemerry. Those who know the area, it's a council estate on the south coast in the UK. It's probably not the most, if you choose to not see the beauty, you wouldn't say it's a pretty estate to be on. But one of the things that Nobes Avenue has is this beautiful avenue of trees with blossom. Now, what we did discover on the weekend, that maybe they're all different variations of cherry blossom. And one of the Japanese cultures is that they have the cherry blossom, they honour the cherry blossom as a recognition that some things last for a very short period of time, and that's about being in the moment. And recently I've been really curious about Japanese culture and the tea ceremony, about really sort of taking time to appreciate this moment right now. And the more I work with my clients, and we're looking about managing themselves, managing other people, most of it, what it comes down to is managing your emotional triggers. And they want to be able to switch off from work. When they go on holiday or they're at home with their family, they just want to be able to switch it all off. And they find that really, really difficult. And I want to talk to you about what that's all about and how that can help you. And I hope that will be of interest to you. And I've even written myself some notes so that I stay on track and I be really focused. So switching off, what is it and what isn't it? For me, what it isn't is flatlining. And when people talk about meditating and being like in the Zen and having no thoughts whatsoever, it's not about never thinking about these things at all. For me, it's about compartmentalizing and putting things in a part of the brain, and actually knowing when you're going to think about it. I call it parking, so that I know the things that are going on in my mind, I'm going to think about those later. And it's not about completely switching off, but it is about when you're in this moment with this person, those thoughts that you're having about work, the emotion or the stress or the anxiety or the frustration of them are not here with you right now. So it's about switching off those emotional triggers that maybe are stopping you from being in the moment. And one of the things I want you to do is be really aware of not comparing yourself with other people. So what you might see happening on the outside, people might look like they're switching off, but actually a lot's going on the inside. They're still processing, they're still thinking, they're still reflecting. And you don't know how they're feeling on the inside. Maybe their stomach is flipping, maybe they're unhappy. So I often see people trying to model or copy people without actually having a true representation. You're not listening, you haven't got a group. One of the things I'm very privileged to be able to do with the 5-day retreat that we run here is that we get 6 to 9 people, and we are listening, we're observing what we see on the outside, and then we're listening to what their experience is on the inside, and we get to hear and see the whole picture, not just parts of it. So don't compare yourself to other people. And partly that's because, this is the last point I want to do, is we're all hardwired differently. And the way that we're hardwired is going to be our massive strength. So there are people who are naturally very in the moment. So my husband is someone like this, and I love him for it because he grounds me. So when we go on holiday, we're very much in this moment. If I say to him, what are your goals for the next year? What are your aspirations for the next, before you die? What's your bucket list? Or what do you want to have happen in the next 90 days? He kind of looks at me as if so, his perception of time is very much, so he naturally is like that. And for me to compare myself with him and feel frustrated because I can't be like that, means I'm trying to learn from the wrong person how to do that. So that makes sense. Whereas I'm somebody who is, in terms of my time profile and how I work, is I can very much go to the past and look at everything that's just happened. I'm really good at going to the future and predicting and actually be able to forecast to about 18 months to 5 years is usually where my time perception. And there are people out there that their timelines are naturally like 100 years. When they're thinking of anything, when they're processing in long time, they see it in terms of the impact globally over a long period of time. So each one of us is hardwired with a different timeline. What I don't know is scientifically is whether that's how we're born or it's behaviour we've learned. But and we all can do in the moment, and we can do future stuff. We can train our brain to do it. However, if you understand how you work, I now surround myself. So my PA is someone that's very grounded in the moment. My Facebook manager, Susie, is very much creative, so she's much better at the big thinking pictures. And Liam, who is also is very much in the moment. So I surround myself with people who can balance me out, and I value the fact that they will bring me back to now, or they'll take me to the future, just based on their natural timelines. So if you want to switch off, the first thing to do is be aware of, how your own timeline reflects back about how your brain's hardwired, because as human beings, we're in this very moment right now. If you're listening to me, your attention hopefully is on what I'm saying, and so you'll be in this moment. And that's why listening skills are so important, because they bring us back, they ground us right in this moment. But if what you're talking about is always very past tense, and what you're talking about is always about the future, then you're not really experiencing right now. So be aware of your language. One of the things that you can do is start to be curious about your language and talk about it in the present tense. Like I'm going to be happy, future tense. It's like I am happy, or not I was happy, past tense. I used to be happy. If you can actually bring your language into the present day, into present language, so present tense, it can change how you think and feel quite quickly. So something to be aware of there. So I want to talk about that. So bringing that back to listening to yourself, if we take it through the clarity process, we ask questions. So when you're switching off and you're present and you're in the moment, that's like what? And that might be all you ever need to do is get clarity of what it's like when you're in the moment. Now, for other people, you might need to go through the language. What does in the moment mean for you? What does switching off mean for you? You might need to look at the attention. Is your language always talking about how you used to be able to do it, or how you wish you could do it in the future, or is it about in the moment? And the reason I love the clean language process that I use is because we bring it into the present right now. So a resource that you had in the past, or a resource that you imagine you could have in the future, by bringing the language into the present tense right now, it updates your story, it updates your dialogue, and you start to experience that being present in the moment right now as it's happening. And then reflecting is being aware that people around you are going to reflect different timelines all of the time, and it's up to you how you filter that feedback. So if you are someone who wants to be really in the moment, and you're with somebody like me who might be like talking about her plans and how excited she is, and she's going very future based, that will take your attention over there. So you have to be aware of what other people are reflecting back to you, and it has to be a conscious decision to be able to listen to it, filter it, and stay with the right now, and making a way of actually processing that information. And that's the bit that most people don't know, is when we're reading on social media, when we're listening to people at networking groups, when we're listening to our family, if we don't understand our own time perceptions, and we understand the people around us have different time perceptions, that's when we can end up in overwhelm. We can end up with our brain being pulled from all these different timelines, and people will be, sometimes people talk about the future, but they really mean the present. Sometimes they talk about the past, but they really mean the present. So we are actually distorting a lot of the time information, because we don't accurately reflect it in our dialogue when we talk to each other. So if you're wanting to be very in the moment, and you're surrounded by people who are planning or forecasting or reflecting, then it will challenge your brain to be able to assimilating it, bring it back. So it's really important when it comes to being aware of what's around you. Now, I hear people say things like, don't surround yourself with negative people. So they might see someone who looks over the past as being negative. I don't think that's the solution. I think it's about developing your listening skills and your ability to filter the feedback in a way that works for you. And it does need to be filtered, not blocked. I see some people who are really good at going like, that's it, I'm not going to listen to that, that's just rubbish, because it's different to how you think and feel. And I feel you miss out on lots of really good information. And likewise, I see other people who take on every single bit of feedback that someone gives them, everything they hear, they assume that that's a better way of doing it, and they keep changing and adapting and being flexible to it. Then they end up with no sense of who they are. So when it comes to reflections, it's really important to be aware of how are you listening, and also how are you consciously deciding to use the information and apply it to your life. And then the I, we talk about intention. So if what can happen when it comes to switching off is that you may be having stimuli around you that you have no cognitive way of processing, and so you just get this feeling. So it's a great conversation we had at the weekend. Hilary was very kind enough to share how she went to the supermarket in Austria, and there was just, she said, I went there and I just had this feeling. It was just like really, really heavy. And it turned out that later that was the place for one of the concentration camps. That's one of the sites. Karen was talking about her visit to a concentration camp in Germany. But there are some of us who are sensitive to things. But most people, because we're human, we do have emotions, we have feelings. What will happen is that you may have had an experience in the past, and your body has a memory of it, so it can feel it. And if something is around you that's stimulating it, but you are not consciously aware of it, it can create this emotional feeling. So you might be wanting to be very present and very calm and switched off and in the moment, but you keep getting this niggly feeling inside. And I call this about nurturing the niggles. So people think that, you know, they shouldn't talk about the negatives, they shouldn't talk about it, but actually, the chances that feeling in there is being triggered by something, and because you're not conscious of it, you can't make a conscious decision what to do about that information, and the likelihood is it's from the past. Now the good news is most people don't go to counselling or go and work with people because they don't want, perhaps they have a memory and they roughly know that there's something that happened that wasn't very nice in their past, and they don't want to have to relive it. And the good news is you don't, because this whole thing about switching off isn't about reliving the trauma, but what the brain does do is it freezes time in terms of memory just before the trauma. But what it forgets to do is unfreeze time just afterwards and remind your whole system that you survived and you're okay. So people like me work with you not to take you back through the trauma, so you don't have to relive all the pain, you don't have to go through it. But what we do is release that emotional trigger that's attached to a memory that is missing half the information, and we just compact this side of the trauma and say to, and when I say trauma, it might be like really, really scary stuff. It could be that someone just shouted at you when you were 3 years old and it was a bit of a shock. It could be that you did something and you thought it was going to go really well and it didn't go how you expected it to, and it can leave you with this emotional imprint that you don't know how to communicate, you don't know how to process. And that is when we start communicating and being not in the moment. We're here right now, but we're having to process a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of overwhelm. And it's because we've got all this stuff, we might have read something, and it's triggered the emotions from the past that we can't logically and cognitively process to ourselves, let anybody else. So just be aware of that. One of the things I talk about change that's going on is nurturing the negative niggles. So be aware of those going on inside of you. And then T, about trusting your own process, is that when you start to understand how you personally switch off and be in the moment, when you know your own process, you'll be able to set yourself up for success. You can start to practice. It's a bit like getting fit at the gym. You'll be able to start practicing what it is that actually works for you. And so that leaves me with the why, is you matter. And just thinking about this story that you're telling yourself now, I'd love to hear, just write down, if you have the courage to put it here on the Facebook page. If not, come into the Manager Critic group and actually do it there privately. But I want you to put down, what's your story that you're telling? Just don't edit it, don't try and do anything, but actually write down, for you, switching off at the moment is like what? And I will go through the language that you're using and help you understand where you need to put your attention right now, what kind of questions you could ask yourself in order to get clarity of what is needed for you to be able to manage your own state, to be able to manage your emotions. I've also put in the link for the video is the Tame the Time Monster. A lot of this is to do with, a lot of the clues are in the language that we're using, the way that we talk about time. So that can be really, really beneficial. But if you know that you are really at risk of you know that your emotions are, it's more around the I, the intention. You've got these emotional triggers that you just can't seem to manage, then please get in touch. Sometimes just a couple of one-to-one sessions, they can be undone. And for other people, it's working in the live retreats that we run in June, where you get to experience being around people with the stimuli, and that those emotions will be triggered in the moment and we can capture them, because it's a bit of a pain sometimes if you're trying to do it from memory recall. If you can't remember what it is, or you don't know what the trigger is, when you work for 5 days on a course with somebody where you're seeing the people every day for 5 days, there's a good chance that one of us will trigger one of those buttons over those 5 days, and then we can actually deal with it live in the moment and help you eradicate it, get rid of it, so that you've got that freedom to live your life in the moment and really enjoy yourself. Hope that's been of use to you today. I've seen someone popping on and off. I'm not sure whether the signal is very good. I really look forward to your comments. I'm going to go and bury myself away and come back in an hour or so and actually check the feed, and I'd love to be able to hear from you. What's switching off for you like? What's the story you're telling yourself about it right now? And if there's anything that we can do here at Step by Step Listening, just let me know. I'd love to be able to help you live in the moment and enjoy your life to the full. Take care. Have a great week. Oh, she says drop in the video. Right, I have to lift it up.